So when the Toronto Blue Jays and the Seattle Mariners were awarded franchises in the American League, the officials in Major League Baseball decided to have an expansion draft that would include only teams from the American League. Now, this drew a little bit of controversy, which I don't know why. If the American League had different rules than the National League, and most of the teams that voted on the process allowed Seattle and Toronto to come in, why would people think that the National League teams' rosters or players unprotected would be drafted? Just made absolutely no sense. Now, the draft for the 77 season was called the 1976 MLB Expansion Draft, held on November 5th, 1976. Now, 30 players each were available to Toronto and Seattle, and they were set to start play in April of 77, and because of preseason and training camps, players needed to be scouted and put together for the possibly 70 players who were going to show up at camp. Now, Seattle was a promise to franchise by Commissioner Bowie Kuhn initially. Now, during the summer of 75, there was speculation that the Twins, White Sox, or San Francisco could move to Seattle. We found out later on that San Francisco was getting some interest in the bunch of Toronto membership group for Toronto to join the National League as the San Francisco franchise. Now, none of these plans proved successful. The American League added a team in Seattle. With 13 teams in a league, it created a scheduling nightmare. The league relented and awarded a franchise to Toronto over Washington, which I think would be the fourth version, or was it the third and a half? I can't remember. They were getting a franchise every 2 weeks in March of 1976. Now, players again were selected only from American League teams, in keeping with the practice of the AL expansion of 61, the NL expansion of 62, and the 69 of the expansion of both leagues, which also included a number of players. Now, beginning with the next expansion, the new teams would select players from teams in both the American and National Leagues. Now, Danny Kaye, part owner of the Mariners, announced the club's first selection, which was a talented outfielder, Rupert Jones, who was taken from Kansas City. Now, excuse me, the number one draft pick for Toronto was Bob Baylor from the Orioles, who ended up being one of the most successful rookies in the franchise's history, but we'll talk about Bob later on. Now, from there, Gary Wheelock to the Mariners, Jerry Garvin, the top flight pitcher to Toronto, Bill Stein from Chicago to Seattle, Jim Clancy to Toronto from the Rangers, Dick Pole from the Red Sox to Seattle, Gary Woods from the A's to Toronto, Dan Meyer from Detroit to Seattle, Rico Cardi, which we'll be talking about in a podcast very soon, from Cleveland to Toronto, Grant Jackson from the Yankees to Seattle, Butch Edge from Milwaukee to Toronto, Al Fitzmaurice from Kansas City to Toronto, Dave Collins from the Angels to the Mariners, Al Woods from the Twins to the Blue Jays, Frank McCormick from the Red Wing, not the Red Wings, of course. Frank McCormick from the Tigers to the Mariners, Mike Dyer from the Orioles to the Blue Jays, Stan Thomas from the Indians to the Mariners, Pete Vukovich, later an all-star reliever from Chicago to Toronto, Juan Bernhardt from the Yankees to the Mariners, Jeff Bird from the Rangers to the Blue Jays, Rick Jones from the Red Sox to the Mariners, Steve Bowling from the Brewers to the Toronto, Glenn Abbott from Oakland to Seattle, Bob Stinson from Kansas City to Seattle, Dennis DeBar from Detroit to Toronto, Carlos Lopez from the Angels to the Mariners, Bill Singer, Toronto's opening the day starter from the Twins to the Blue Jays, Dave Pagan from the Orioles to the Mariners, Jim Mason from the Yankees to the Blue Jays, Roy Thomas from the White Sox to the Mariners, Doug Alt from the Rangers to the Jays, Tom McMillan from the Indians to the Mariners, Ernie Whitt from the Red Sox to Toronto, who ended up being the great platoon catcher from Toronto for years, Pete Broberg from the Brewers to the Mariners, Mike Weathers from the A's to the Blue Jays, Staggs from Kansas City to the Blue Jays, Steve Braun from the Twins to the Mariners, Steve Hargan from the Rangers to Toronto, Leroy Stanton from the Angels to the Mariners, Garrett Orge from the Yankees to the Blue Jays, Bob Galasso from the Orioles to the Mariners, Dave Lemanchek from the Tigers to the Blue Jays, Steve Burke from the Red Sox to the Mariners, Larry Anderson from the Brewers to the Blue Jays, Joe Liss from Cleveland to Seattle, Jesse Jefferson from Chicago to Toronto, Alan Griffin from Oakland to Seattle, Dave McKay from the Twins to the Blue Jays, again the first Canadian and the Blue Jays, Bill Laxton from Detroit to Seattle, Tom Bruno from Kansas City to Toronto, Julio Cruz from California to Seattle, Otto Velez from the Yankees to the Blue Jays, Steve Barr from the Rangers to the Mariners, Mike Willis from Baltimore to Toronto, Pucci Delgado from the Red Sox to the Mariners, Sam Ewing from the White Sox to the Blue Jays, Tommy Smith from the Indians to the Mariners, Leon Houghton from Oakland to Toronto, and Greg Garrotti, the final pick, Milwaukee to Seattle. Now, what was interesting about this, ladies and gentlemen, there are also different trades and machinations going on. For example, Al Fitzmaurice, he was traded on the day of the draft by Toronto to Cleveland in exchange for Alan Alby and Doug Howard. Now, again, with Rico Cardi, shortly after the draft, he was traded by Toronto to Indians for Rick Saron and John Lowenstein, but Toronto later reacquired Cardi twice, who played for them in 78 and 79. Now, the draft, I think, was a little bit better for Toronto because within 6 years there were contenders. Seattle wasn't really a big contender back in the day, and not until Griffey and other key players came in. So to me, Toronto won this draft, getting Bob Baylor, Jerry Garvin, Jim Clancy, Gary Woods, Rico Cardi in that big trade. Eventually, Al Woods was quite good as well. Pete Vukovich. We can see that Toronto had a little bit better luck with some of the veteran and top-flight young players. So that's the story about the 1976 Major League Entry Draft. Give us a like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you think about maybe somebody Toronto should have picked in that draft, because I have my own idea, but was he protected or not? I'm not really sure. I'm thinking about somebody by the name of Rick Burleson. It would be interesting to see what was available out there for like a secondary shortstop to either back up Torres or be number one. Thanks for listening. Bye.